Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Silver Mellow, but you can all call me Silver. Before we get to the main content, please show your support by subscribing and clicking the bell so you all get notified by when I upload new videos. In a dark alleyway, completely hidden by majority of the city, covered by the tallest buildings, and covered in the most disgusting of dirt and rubbish, sits a young man. A young man with pale, very pale like skin, and one or two cracks coming from the side of his cheek up close to his eye. He has one green eye that looks to be consistently glowing, with a red eye that looks fine. This was, in the far future, known as one of the most greatest villains ever to fight and successfully use the Omnitrix in one of the first many crimes that this man has committed. He was using the Omnitrix as if it was no biggie, no problem. However, unlike the years when the first Omnitrix and the first hero was around, Ben 10,000, these new Omnitrixes that are used by our current heroes are able to only be used by that family as of DNA. Or DNA locking, so most Omnitrix can only be used by a particular bloodline. Anyway, he was using it fine for so long. One of his most used aliens happened to be the alien known as Wildmutt, a dog-like furry creature with no eyes, but has impeccable hearing and smell. As the years go by, something slowly began to show itself with this particular villain. This particular villain had a problem where every time he kept using his Omnitrix that he had stolen, the aliens began to crack and morph. At first he thought it was a sign of an evolution, such as while using Wildmutt, began to gain more quill appendage-like things coming from its back and arms. It gained ears growing out. It gained 2 additional legs at the back, allowing it to reach even higher speeds. But this was all forsaken when one of the arms and partial parts of the 2 original legs began to crack, break, and disintegrate in front of the people. Okay, so before we continue on with the rest of that story, because to be fair, I'm actually really enjoying this story. I actually wrote this one down so that it would be a lot more better, and I've gone out of the teaching role that I normally put my character in and went for a more narrator, if that makes any sense. Anyway, I wanted to thank you all for always, even though it's only a few of you and I'm only gaining a few views every once in a while, I noticed that you guys really enjoyed my Corrupting Ben 10 Aliens, as that video has now reached over 200 views. So I'm very grateful, and I hope you guys can show more of that support in my other videos, such as my Mandalorians, my new Pokemon video, and so forth. If you guys also want me to do more of the Minecraft ones as well, that'd be great, because I wouldn't mind doing the retrain of that LA that I drew. That one didn't come out very nice. Anyway, please continue to show your support by liking, subscribing, clicking the bell, leaving a comment, as it all just shows that you guys do want to see more. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the video. The story should be good, I hope. The mutations and the cracks became more apparent as the villain began to use more different aliens. You see, at a certain point, Wildmutt became too unusable. You see, one of its arms had been completely detached, even though you could still move it as if it was still attached by bones. It was just currently floating. That it gotten to a point of where you were unable to use it. The mutations in the other aliens got even more odd and weird. You see, most aliens have a dominant DNA trait. You see, kind of like how forearms has a fifth sort of gene that allows them to have an additional arm. His one began to corrupt and morph and become more grotesque as slime began to pop out the neck, releasing a fifth arm that was smaller, weaker, and less usable as it was sticking out the side of the neck and their face. Not only that, but the cracks became worse as the four-armed, or in this case, the villain's five-arm alien had its knee completely vaporized and disintegrated. It was gruesome for people to see. Civilians would run just from the sheer disgust and horrifying sight of these aliens and villains. But another thing that made it so much worse was the strength level increase. You see, even though the fifth arm was essentially useless and made it that the head couldn't move, but the strength in the four different usable limbs became stronger and faster. It was as if it's being hit by a missile every time you would get hit by the fist of this thing. At first, he was consistently using this to gain money, power, and wealth, but after a certain point, when the decaying came around the Omnitrix on the chest, it became so much more worse. As when the chest started caving in, the cracks began to worsen. He completely lost his left eyes. He began becoming more violent whenever he became into this form. It was horrendous. And the first sighting of him recently using this particular alien was when he was robbing a bank and came across a police battalion or squad. The police tried to stop him, but he, of course, couldn't use any of his other aliens at the time, so he went into forearms and ended up flipping the car, killing 3 policemen. It wasn't great, of course, but many people were excited to see these new mutations, as these mutations were leading to new developments in all kinds of DNA-like science. But it still did not stop how many times he used this alien. You see, on one night, while using this particular alien, he had also murdered 3 civilians when they wouldn't give up their wallets, purses, and jewelry. It was horrendous and hideous. It was even worse when he used his cannonball alien. The cannonball alien works just as much as the forearms alien does. Another appendage like tail, had glowing green around it, losing body parts. It was severely bad. It was until, for a moment, that the villain did actually went to a hospital. No one knew who he was, of course, because whenever he was spotted, it was in his alien form. He had a quick test, and it actually seems as the Omnitrix is also corrupting him as well, like his human body. We don't know all the scientific facts, but it is said that the more he uses it, the more his body begins to decay and crack. Many heroes believe that if they just keep halting him, he may die of his own means. Or so we thought, or so they thought. You see, the heroes began doing this, slowly killing him by making him use his aliens all the time. And it was working for some time as they began to find out who he was as a civilian. It wasn't hard to see because he has cracks and disintegrated limbs. It's hard for people not to notice this. As a result, the police had managed to find out where he lives, or slash hideout, and managed to capture him. For a little while, anyway. You see, a detective managed to convince him to talk for a little while, and we found out that the Omnitrix, because of its use for only being allowed to be used by the Tennyson family, it actually created a sort of virus that slowly corrupts the wearer, the user, and anyone else that they are touching for a long period of time. This is where the police started to, well, majority of the police began to suddenly start feeling ill and sore and in pain a lot, as a lot of them that interrogated him did end up coming down with the same signs as these other aliens. But we won't get into that. We'll carry on with the rest, as you see, it was until the main detective left the room when this particular villain decided to use his Omnitrix. And it was at this point that every police officer around the world had tried to capture this man, as he went into another different alien, grey matter, an intellect type alien. This particular alien allows one to basically be as smart or smarter than the entire planet. You see, he actually used this particular alien to write down the different types of code that he could possibly use to hack his Omnitrix. He had only gone through like 300, 4,000, or I think he said possibly 8,000 different codes. There was still quite a load to do, but we were grateful that he hadn't figured it out yet, as by knowing this, we were able to finally kind of come up with a particular timeline or time that we would have to capture him before he realizes how to deactivate the DNA aspect of his Omnitrix, preventing further corruption. Another mutation that his Omnitrix gave to his aliens was grey matter became smarter. But as he became smarter each time that this particular villain used the Omnitrix, his head and brain began to swell and vein as his other eye fell out. It was horrendous, but you could tell that this villain was a much older type, as the younger the user, the more younger the alien will look. You see, a dominant DNA trait of male grey matter aliens is their weird whiskers that form near where the beard and the mustache of a human would be. So they were pretty long. So as a result, we actually managed to figure out that this particular villain did have an age. Because when the police captured him, they couldn't quite tell his age, as he was fairly cracked and rotting away. We do believe that he will find the answer to preventing the corruption of the Omnitrix soon. We're trying to see if we can stop that before then. But for right now, all we can do is really hope, as this particular alien has led to the discovery of loads of other things. You see, we have particular heroes that only use grey matter, and those particular heroes have ended up creating massive tech and travel through space. We've gained so much from the heroes being able to use this particular alien, and we can only hope that they'll figure out a way to prevent this particular villain at some point. But we all just need to hope. Okay, so I hope you all liked that story. I do feel like maybe I could tweak it at the end. I do feel like maybe that the story was a little too short, and it feels like maybe I tried to drag it out. I'm not quite sure how I feel about how that sounds, because I didn't do that, but it does sound like it when I did the overall edit of this video. But I don't really mind all that much. I am just very happy with how this corruption looks. You see, unlike in part 1 of this video, I went for a more, less of a glow. I felt like the glow was a nice touch. It really was. But I don't feel like it was really showing much of a corruption and the decay and the breaking of the body. It was sort of just electrical lines on the skin with decay showing around. So I'm really hoping you guys really like these versions as well, because these versions I've spent, I think, a lot longer on, because, oh, I think when I did the Heat Blast one, I spent maybe an hour and a half on it, but with these ones I spent more like 3 to 4 hours on each one. Anyway, I hope you all guys enjoyed the video. Please support my channel, and please go and watch part 1 of this series, as well as the other different arts I've done. I'll see you all in my next art video.